The morning sun filtered through the blinds as Thomas Chen woke up in his modest apartment. Despite being one of Hollywood's most beloved actors, Thomas lived simply. His philosophy was clear. Fame and wealth were just temporary companions in life's journey, while kindness and humility were the true constants. He stretched and glanced at his watch. It was already 9:30 a.m., and he needed to make a quick trip to the bank before heading to the film set. His new project, an action thriller, required long hours of training and filming. The director had given the cast the morning off due to some technical issues on set, and Thomas planned to use this unexpected free time to handle personal errands. After a quick shower and breakfast, Thomas dressed in his usual casual attire: jeans, a plain black t-shirt, and a baseball cap. He had learned over the years that simplicity often provided the best disguise in public. Not that he was trying to hide. Thomas genuinely enjoyed interacting with people, but today he was on a tight schedule. The bank was only a 10-minute walk from his apartment. Thomas preferred walking whenever possible, finding it both refreshing and grounding. As he strolled down the busy street, a few people glanced his way with that look of vague recognition. Some smiled, others whispered to their companions, but most respected his privacy. When he reached First National Bank, Thomas pushed through the glass doors and entered the cool, quiet interior. The bank wasn't particularly crowded for a weekday morning. A few customers sat in the waiting area. Some stood in line for the tellers, and others worked with personal bankers at their desks. Thomas got in line and waited patiently, scrolling through messages on his phone. His agent had sent over some script revisions for tomorrow's scenes, and the production coordinator had confirmed the new call time. Thomas made a mental note to review the changes once he got back home. When his turn came, he approached the teller window with a smile. The young man behind the counter, whose name tag read Ryan, looked up and froze momentarily before regaining his composure. "Good morning," Thomas said pleasantly. "I'd like to make a withdrawal, please." Ryan nodded nervously. "Of course, sir. I'll need to see your ID and account information." Thomas pulled out his wallet and slid his ID and bank card across the counter. "I'd like to withdraw $8,000, please. I know it's a bit over the standard limit, but I called ahead yesterday and spoke with the manager about it." Ryan examined the ID carefully, then looked back at Thomas with uncertainty in his eyes. He typed something into his computer and frowned. "I'm sorry, sir, but I'll need to get my supervisor for this transaction." Thomas nodded, understanding the protocol for larger withdrawals. "No problem." Ryan picked up the phone at his station and spoke quietly before turning back to Thomas. "She'll be right with you, sir. If you could just step aside and wait over there." He gestured toward the waiting area. Thomas moved to the side and watched as Ryan walked to the back office. Through the glass partition, he could see Ryan talking animatedly with an older woman in a tailored suit, who kept glancing in Thomas's direction. After a few minutes, they both approached him. "Mr. Chen?" The woman extended her hand. "I'm Patricia Winters, the branch manager. Could you come with me to my office, please?" Thomas followed her to a small office at the back of the bank. Patricia closed the door and motioned for him to sit. "Mr. Chen, there seems to be some confusion with your account. According to our records, the account holder doesn't match your identification." Thomas blinked in surprise. "That's strange. I've had this account for over 15 years. I opened it when I first moved to the city." Patricia looked uncomfortable. "I understand, sir, but we have strict protocols for identity verification. The photo in our system doesn't appear to match you." "That's impossible," Thomas said, keeping his voice calm despite his growing frustration. "I use this account regularly. I've worked with your bank for years." Patricia turned her computer screen so Thomas could see it. "This is the photo we have on file for the account holder." Thomas leaned forward and was surprised to see a much younger version of himself. A publicity shot from one of his early films where he had long hair and was significantly thinner. He almost laughed at the outdated image. "That's me from about 12 years ago. It was for a film called Midnight Runner. I'm surprised the bank is using that photo instead of my ID picture." Patricia didn't seem convinced. "I'm sorry, Mr. Chen, but I can't authorize this withdrawal without additional verification." Your current appearance is quite different from our records. Thomas took a deep breath, trying to remain patient. I understand you're doing your job, but this is my account. I can provide additional identification if that would help. The problem is, Mr. Chen, if that is who you are, this is a high-profile account with special security protocols. Anyone could come in with identification claiming to be Thomas Chen. Now Thomas was genuinely confused. What do you mean high profile? It's just a regular checking account. Patricia hesitated. Sir, this account belongs to the Thomas Chen, the actor. We have special handling instructions for celebrity accounts. Thomas couldn't help but smile now. Yes, I understand. I am that Thomas Chen. Patricia's expression remained skeptical. Sir, Thomas Chen is currently filming a movie overseas. It was in the entertainment news just last week. He couldn't possibly be in this bank right now. Thomas was stunned into silence. Whatever news story Patricia had seen was clearly wrong. His current project was filming locally, not overseas. He pulled out his phone and opened his photos, scrolling to find a recent picture from the set. Look, he said, showing her a photo of himself with the director and co-stars taken just yesterday. I'm filming locally. The project in Europe was postponed until next year. Patricia glanced at the photo but still looked unconvinced. I'm sorry, but anyone could have a photo like this. We need official verification. Thomas was starting to feel like he was in one of his own movies, a case of mistaken identity leading to increasingly absurd situations. He tried a different approach. Could you please call the number on file for the account? My phone will ring and that should help verify my identity. Patricia considered this for a moment, then nodded. She turned to her computer and pulled up the account details. When she dialed the number, Thomas's phone remained silent. That's strange, Thomas said, checking his phone. I changed my number a few months ago for security reasons. I thought I updated it with the bank. Patricia set down the phone. Mr. Chen, or whoever you are, I cannot in good conscience authorize this withdrawal. There are too many inconsistencies. Thomas ran his hand through his hair, trying to think of a solution. What about my online banking credentials? I can log in right now and show you. That would be helpful, Patricia agreed, though she still seemed doubtful. Thomas took out his phone again and opened his banking app. He logged in without issue and handed the phone to Patricia. See? It's my account. Patricia examined the screen carefully. This does appear to be legitimate access to the account, but someone could have your login information. Thomas was beginning to lose patience but maintained his composure. Is there someone here who knows me? I've visited this branch several times. What about William? He's been my personal banker for years. Patricia's eyes widened slightly at the mention of the name. William Harper? He's our senior financial advisor. Yes, that's him, Thomas said with relief. Is he here today? Let me check. Patricia picked up her phone and made a quick call. William will be out in a moment. They waited in uncomfortable silence until there was a knock on the door. William, a man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and glasses, entered the office. Thomas? William's face broke into a smile. What's going on here? Patricia quickly explained the situation. William listened and then laughed. Patricia, this is indeed Thomas Chen. I've worked with him for years. The news story you're thinking of was about his upcoming project in Europe, which was postponed. He's currently filming locally. Patricia's face flushed with embarrassment. I'm so sorry, Mr. Chen. We can't be too careful with high-value accounts and with the information I had. Thomas smiled understandingly. It's all right. I appreciate the security measures, even if they're inconvenient sometimes. William turned to Thomas. Let me handle your withdrawal personally. Again, my apologies for the confusion. As they left Patricia's office, Thomas noticed several bank employees and customers staring in his direction, whispering among themselves. News of the misunderstanding had apparently spread throughout the bank. William led Thomas to his desk and processed the withdrawal efficiently. I'm truly sorry about this, Thomas. Patricia is new to managing celebrity accounts. She was just following protocol. No harm done. Thomas replied, tucking the envelope of cash into his jacket pocket. It's actually reassuring to know the bank is so careful. As Thomas prepared to leave, Patricia approached him again, her face still flushed with embarrassment. Mr. Chen, please accept my sincerest apologies for the misunderstanding. We value your business greatly and I feel terrible about what happened. Thomas smiled warmly. Really, it's okay. I understand you were just doing your job. Patricia hesitated, then added, if there's anything we can do to make this up to you. Just update my photo in your system, Thomas replied with a laugh. That publicity shot is from a lifetime ago. As he walked out of the bank into the bright sunlight, Thomas checked his watch. The whole ordeal had taken longer than expected, but he still had time to review his script changes before heading to the set. What struck Thomas most about the incident wasn't the inconvenience or even the mistaken identity. It was how quickly people could form judgments based on outdated or incorrect information. In his line of work, public perception was everything. Yet so much of it was built on fragments of truth mixed with assumption. Thomas smiled to himself as he walked back to his apartment. Today's bank visit would make for an amusing story to share with his castmates. In a world where celebrity often meant special treatment, there was something refreshingly normal about being questioned, doubted, and having to prove himself just like everyone else. Thomas arrived at the film set just before noon, the morning's bank incident still fresh in his mind. The converted warehouse buzzed with activity. Crew members adjusted lighting rigs, makeup artists prepared their stations, and production assistants rushed about with clipboards and coffee. He nodded to the security guard at the entrance, a burly man named Frank who had worked on 3 of Thomas's previous films. Morning, Mr. Chen, Frank said with a smile. Or should I say afternoon now? Just barely made it, Thomas replied, returning the smile. Technical issues all fixed? From what I hear, yes. Something about the camera rig for the chase sequence. Frank handed Thomas his set badge. Director's been asking for you. Thomas clipped the badge to his belt and made his way through the maze of equipment and people. He spotted his director, Vincent Lee, huddled with the cinematographer near one of the main sets, an elaborate replica of a high-tech laboratory. Thomas. Vincent waved him over. Good timing. We were just finalizing the shot list for today. Vincent was a respected indie filmmaker who had recently broken into mainstream cinema. This project was his biggest yet, a science fiction thriller about memory manipulation. Thomas played the lead. A scientist who discovers his own memories have been altered. Sorry about the delay this morning, Vincent said. Camera rig needed recalibration. But we're good to go now, Thomas nodded. No problem. Gave me time to handle some personal business. He considered telling Vincent about the bank incident, but decided to save the story for later. Great. We're starting with scene 87, the confrontation with Dr. Reynolds. Lisa's already in makeup. Lisa Wong played the film's antagonist, a brilliant but morally ambiguous neuroscientist. Off-screen, she was one of Thomas's closest friends in the industry. I'll head to makeup then, Thomas said, turning to leave. Vincent caught his arm. Everything okay? You seem a bit distracted, Thomas smiled. Just an interesting morning. I'll tell you about it later. In the makeup trailer, Thomas found Lisa already in character, hair pulled back severely, wearing the lab coat and glasses that transformed her from a warm, vibrant person into the cold Dr. Reynolds. The great Thomas Chen graces us with his presence, she teased as he took the seat beside her. The makeup artist, Hector, began preparing Thomas's face while chatting about weekend plans. You won't believe what happened to me this morning, Thomas said, looking at Lisa in the mirror. Let me guess, another fan asked you to sign their baby? Thomas laughed. Worse, I got denied access to my own bank account because they didn't believe I was me. Lisa turned in her chair, suddenly interested. Seriously, what happened? As Hector worked, Thomas recounted the whole story. The skeptical teller, the doubtful manager, the salvation from his personal banker. The best part, he concluded, was that she thought I couldn't possibly be Thomas Chen because, according to Entertainment News, I was filming overseas. Lisa burst out laughing. That ridiculous article. I saw it too. Some blogger claimed you were secretly filming in Prague. I figured you'd be annoyed. First I've heard of it, actually, Thomas admitted. But it nearly cost me access to my own money. Fame in the digital age, Lisa sighed. Remember when the worst thing that could happen was a bad review in a newspaper? At least newspapers fact-checked, Thomas replied. Hector finished Thomas's makeup, subtle enhancements to bring out his features under the harsh set lighting, and moved on to touch up Lisa's look. You know what's interesting, Lisa said thoughtfully, is that the bank manager was so confident in what she'd read that she doubted the evidence of her own eyes. People see what they expect to see, Thomas replied. She expected a fraud, so that's what she saw. Ironic for a film about manipulated perception, Lisa noted. Their conversation was interrupted by a production assistant poking her head into the trailer. 5 minutes, please. Director wants you both on set. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of filming. The confrontation scene between Thomas's character and Dr. Reynolds was emotionally intense, requiring multiple takes from different angles. By the time Vincent called wrap for the day, it was after 7 in the evening. Great work today, everyone, Vincent announced to the crew. We're ahead of schedule now, despite the morning delay. Call time tomorrow is 8 a.m. sharp. Thomas changed out of his costume, a torn and bloodied lab coat from the action sequence they'd shot last, and into his street clothes. He was gathering his things from his trailer when his phone buzzed with a notification. It was a news alert. Actor Thomas Chen denied access to own bank account. Exclusive story. Thomas stared at the screen in disbelief. How had this story already leaked to the press? He tapped the notification and was taken to a celebrity gossip website. The article was brief but embarrassingly accurate, detailing his visit to First National Bank that morning and the confusion over his identity. There were no direct quotes, but the piece painted a picture of an entitled celebrity demanding special treatment. The manager, properly following security protocols, refused to be starstruck, the article claimed. Sources say Chen became visibly frustrated when asked to verify his identity like any regular customer. Thomas felt a surge of annoyance. The story completely misrepresented what had happened. Yes, he'd been frustrated, but he'd remained polite and understanding throughout the encounter, and he certainly hadn't expected special treatment, quite the opposite. His phone buzzed again, a text from his publicist Nancy. Saw the bank story. Already getting media inquiries. Need to talk ASAP. Thomas sighed and called her back immediately. This is ridiculous, Nancy said when she answered. I've got 3 major entertainment sites asking for comment. How did this even leak? No idea, Thomas replied, rubbing his temples. It just happened this morning. Someone at the bank must have talked. Probably got paid a nice sum too, Nancy muttered. Look, we need to get ahead of this. It's minor now, but you know how these things can spiral. Thomas knew she was right. In the entertainment industry, even small incidents could balloon into major controversies if not handled properly. What do you suggest? 2 options, Nancy said. We either issue a brief statement clarifying what happened, or we ignore it completely and let it die out naturally. Thomas considered. What's the angle they're pushing? Am I the entitled celebrity or the victim of overzealous security? A bit of both, depending on the outlet. Most are playing it for laughs. Even Hollywood stars have to prove their identity. Then let's leave it, Thomas decided. If anyone asked directly, I'll say it was a simple misunderstanding and I appreciate the bank's security measures. You sure? We could use this to highlight the issue of false reporting. That overseas filming rumor is exactly what caused this problem. Thomas smiled to himself. Nancy, if we tried to correct every false story about me, we'd never do anything else. Let this one go. After hanging up, Thomas packed up his remaining belongings and headed for the exit. In the parking lot, he ran into Vincent, who was loading equipment into his car. Hey, Vincent called out. A bunch of us are grabbing dinner at that new place on Main Street. You should join, Thomas hesitated. He was tired, and the news of the bank story going public had dampened his mood. But then again, good company might be exactly what he needed. Sure, he agreed. I could use a good meal. Great, Vincent grinned. Oh, and you promised to tell me about your interesting morning, Thomas laughed. Apparently you can read all about it online now. Vincent looked confused, and Thomas briefly explained about the bank incident and the subsequent news story. That's entertainment journalism for you, Vincent said with a shake of his head. But hey, at least it'll blow over quickly unless... Unless what? Thomas asked, noticing Vincent's sudden thoughtful expression. Unless the bank makes a big deal about it. Have they reached out to apologize or anything? Not yet, Thomas replied. But it just happened this morning. Vincent nodded slowly. Just be prepared. Companies hate this kind of publicity. They might try to make a grand gesture to save face. Thomas hadn't considered that possibility. What kind of gesture? Who knows? Vincent shrugged. A formal apology, special treatment, donations to a charity in your name. I've seen it all. As they walked toward their cars, Thomas wondered how the bank would respond. The branch manager, Patricia, had seemed genuinely mortified by the misunderstanding. Would the bank's corporate office feel compelled to make amends now that the story was public? Either way, Thomas said finally, it's out of my hands now. That's the spirit, Vincent clapped him on the shoulder. Now let's go eat. I'm starving, and apparently, they have the best steak in town. As Thomas drove to the restaurant following Vincent's car, he realized that this small incident had taken on a life of its own. What had started as a simple misunderstanding at the bank was now entertainment news, spreading across the internet in real time. He shook his head, amused despite his annoyance. In the age of social media and instant news, privacy was increasingly rare, especially for someone in the public eye. The bank story would likely be forgotten in a day or two, replaced by some other celebrity's minor mishap or triumph. Still, as he parked his car outside the restaurant, Thomas couldn't help wondering what tomorrow would bring. Would the bank reach out? Would the story grow or fade away? And most importantly, how would he handle whatever came next? The dinner with Vincent and the crew had been exactly what Thomas needed. Good food, better company, and conversation that had nothing to do with banks or mistaken identities. By the time he arrived home just after midnight, the whole incident felt distant, almost like something that had happened to someone else. Thomas's apartment was quiet and dark. He dropped his keys on the side table and checked his phone one last time before bed. There were 3 missed calls from Nancy, his publicist, and a text that simply read, "Bank story bigger than expected. Call me before you check social media." Thomas frowned. It was too late to call Nancy back now, but her message sparked his curiosity. He opened his social media app and was immediately bombarded with notifications, hundreds of them, far more than usual. Scrolling through, he saw that most were comments on the bank story, which had apparently been picked up by major news outlets. Can't believe they didn't recognize Thomas Chen. First National Bank needs better training for their staff. Happens to all of us, celebrities are just like us, lol. Thomas scrolled further and found something unexpected. A formal statement from First National Bank's corporate social media account. First National Bank deeply regrets the unfortunate misunderstanding at our downtown branch involving valued customer Thomas Chen. We pride ourselves on excellent customer service and security protocols. In this instance, our commitment to security resulted in an inconvenience to Mr. Chen. We have reached out privately to apologize and are reviewing our celebrity client verification procedures. The statement had thousands of comments, many defending Thomas, others defending the bank. Some people were using it as an opportunity to share their own frustrating banking experiences. Thomas closed the app, suddenly too tired to process it all. He'd call Nancy in the morning and figure out how to respond. For now, sleep was the priority. Thomas's alarm blared at 6:30 a.m. He had an early call time, and after the late night, waking up was a struggle. He forced himself out of bed and into the shower, letting the hot water clear his mind. As he was making coffee, his phone rang. "Nancy, right on schedule. Have you seen it all?" she asked without preamble when he answered. "I saw the bank statement last night," Thomas replied, stifling a yawn, "and some comments. Seems to have blown up more than we expected." "Blown up is an understatement," Nancy said. "It's everywhere. Morning shows are talking about it. Thomas Chen Bank fiasco is trending, and now everyone has an opinion about celebrity treatment versus security protocols." Thomas nearly choked on his coffee. "Morning shows? Seriously? It was just a mix-up at a bank." "It's relatable content," Nancy explained. "Everyday person versus big institution, with a celebrity twist. People love it." Thomas leaned against his kitchen counter, trying to process this information. "So what's the damage control?" "That's why I'm calling. The bank's PR team reached out late last night. They want to make this right in a big way." "Define big way," Thomas said cautiously. "They're proposing a formal, in-person apology. The regional director wants to meet with you at the branch. They'd issue a new statement afterward." and they'd make a sizable donation to your foundation. Thomas's charity foundation supported arts education in underserved communities, a cause close to his heart. The thought of additional funding was tempting, but he hesitated. I don't know, Nancy. Seems like it would just keep the story alive longer, and it really wasn't that big a deal. Thomas, this is a win-win. The bank saves face, your foundation gets funding, and you look gracious for accepting their apology. The story dies with a positive ending instead of lingering. Thomas considered it as he poured his coffee into a travel mug. When would they want to do this? Today, if possible. They're eager to resolve it quickly. I'm on set all day today. We're shooting the climax sequence. They said they could work around your schedule. Early morning, lunch break after wrap, whatever works. Thomas glanced at the clock. He needed to leave in 10 minutes to make it to set on time. Let me think about it. I'll call you back after I talk to Vincent about the schedule. Don't wait too long, Nancy advised. The longer this stays in the news cycle, the more it mutates. Some outlets are already twisting it to make you sound demanding or entitled. Thomas sighed. Fine, I'll call you before lunch. He hung up, finished his coffee, and headed out the door. The morning was bright and clear, but Thomas hardly noticed as he drove to the set, his mind preoccupied with the unexpected attention his bank visit had generated. At the set, the atmosphere was different. As Thomas walked through security, he noticed people glancing his way, some smiling or whispering. Frank, the security guard, actually chuckled when he saw Thomas. Morning, Mr. Chen, got your ID today? He joked. Thomas managed a smile. Never leave home without it now. Inside, the situation wasn't much better. Crew members who normally treated him like just another coworker were now approaching with comments about the story. My bank never recognizes me either, one lighting technician said. I once got locked out of my account because they thought I was overseas. Offered a sound. Engineer. Thomas nodded politely, but the constant comments were wearing thin. He was relieved when Vincent called everyone to set up for the first shot of the day. During a brief break between scenes, Thomas pulled Vincent aside and explained the bank's proposal. They want to do a formal apology? With media coverage? Vincent asked, eyebrows raised. That's the idea, Thomas confirmed. Nancy thinks it's a good opportunity. Clean ending to the story, funding for the foundation. Vincent considered for a moment. We're scheduled to finish the lab explosion sequence by 4. I could rearrange things so you'd be done by 3 if you wanted to do it today. You wouldn't mind? It's fine. We can shoot some of Lisa's solo scenes this afternoon. Vincent studied Thomas's face. But you don't seem thrilled about it, Thomas sighed. It feels like overkill. The bank made a mistake, but it was an honest one. I don't need a public apology ceremony. What about the donation to your foundation? That part I like, Thomas admitted. The kids in those programs could really use the support. Then do it for them, Vincent suggested. Smile for the cameras, accept the apology graciously, and move on. By tomorrow, everyone will be talking about something else. Thomas nodded slowly. You're right. I'll tell Nancy to set it up for this afternoon. During his lunch break, Thomas called Nancy back and agreed to the meeting. She immediately went into planning mode. The regional director, Philip Dawson, will be there, along with Patricia Winters, the branch manager from yesterday. They'll have a ceremonial check for the foundation. I suggested $100,000 and they didn't blink. $100,000? Thomas was genuinely surprised. For not recognizing me? For the negative publicity, Nancy corrected. Trust me, that's a small price for them to pay to turn this around. I've seen companies spend millions to fix PR disasters smaller than this. After finalizing the details, Thomas returned to filming. The afternoon passed quickly as they completed the complex explosion sequence, which involved precise timing, special effects, and intense emotional performances. By 3 o'clock, Thomas was exhausted but satisfied with the day's work. Vincent called his scenes wrapped, and Thomas headed to his trailer to clean up and change before the bank meeting. As he was removing his makeup, there was a knock on his trailer door. Come in, he called. Lisa stuck her head in. Hey, heard you're doing the big bank apology thing. News travels fast, Thomas replied. Vincent told me. Lisa entered and sat down in the chair opposite him. Want moral support? I could come with you. Thomas smiled gratefully. Thanks, but I think I need to handle this one solo. It'll be quick. In and out, smile for the cameras, accept the apology, and done. Well, call me after. A bunch of us are getting drinks to celebrate surviving the explosion scene. Will do. After Lisa left, Thomas changed into a casual but neat outfit, dark jeans and a button-down shirt, and headed out. Nancy had texted that she would meet him at the bank. When Thomas arrived at First National Bank, he was surprised to see a small crowd gathered outside. There were several news vans, reporters with cameras, and onlookers with phones raised. Nancy was waiting near the entrance, looking professionally polished as always. Bit more media than I expected, Thomas muttered as he joined her. The bank may have sent out a press release, Nancy admitted. But this is good. More coverage means more attention for your foundation. Thomas nodded, putting on his public smile as they approached the bank doors. Inside, the atmosphere was formal and tense. Several bank employees stood in a line with Patricia Winters and an older man in an expensive suit at the center. Mr. Chen, the man stepped forward, hand extended. Philip Dawson, Regional Director for First National Bank. Thank you so much for coming. Thomas shook his hand. Thank you for having me. Dawson gestured to Patricia, who looked extremely uncomfortable. I believe you've met our branch manager, Ms. Winters. Yes, hello again, Thomas said warmly, hoping to put her at ease. Mr. Chen, Patricia said stiffly, I want to personally apologize for the confusion yesterday. I was simply following protocol, but I should have handled it differently. Thomas could tell she had rehearsed these lines. Really, it's fine. Security is important. I appreciate that the bank takes it seriously. Dawson beamed at his response. Excellent. Now we've prepared a small ceremony, if you don't mind. Just a formal apology, presentation of a donation to your foundation, and a few photos. Thomas glanced at Nancy, who gave him an encouraging nod. Lead the way, he said. The small ceremony turned out to be an elaborate affair in the bank's main lobby. Employees and selected customers formed an audience, cameras were positioned for optimal coverage, and a large ceremonial check was displayed prominently. As Thomas stood beside Dawson, listening to the director's scripted apology speech, he couldn't help but marvel at how quickly a simple misunderstanding had transformed into this public spectacle. Just 24 hours ago, he had been standing in this same building, simply trying to withdraw his own money. But as Dawson announced the $100,000 donation to the Arts Education Foundation, Thomas thought of the children who would benefit, new instruments for music programs, supplies for art classes, scholarships for dance lessons. Perhaps this unexpected turn of events wasn't so bad after all. The formal apology ceremony at the bank concluded with handshakes, smiles for the cameras, and Thomas graciously accepting the oversized check for his foundation. As the photographers called for just one more shot, Thomas maintained his pleasant expression despite feeling increasingly uncomfortable with the spectacle. And that's a wrap, Nancy whispered as the last camera lowered. You did great. Regional Director Dawson approached with Patricia Winters in tow. Mr. Chen, we can't thank you enough for your understanding. First National Bank values all our customers equally, whether they're Hollywood stars or not. Thomas nodded politely. I appreciate that, Mr. Dawson. And thank you for the generous donation to the foundation. It will help a lot of kids. It's the least we could do, Dawson replied smoothly. Now, if you don't mind, there are a few reporters outside who'd like a quick word. Nothing extensive, just a statement about how we've resolved the situation. Thomas glanced at Nancy, who gave a subtle nod. Of course, he said, following Dawson toward the bank's entrance. Outside, the small media gathering had grown considerably. Thomas counted at least 6 news vans and dozens of reporters and photographers. The crowd surged forward as he appeared in the doorway. Mr. Chen, how do you feel about the bank's apology? Was this all a publicity stunt? Will you continue banking with First National? The questions came rapid fire, microphones thrust toward his face. Thomas had faced media scrums before, but he was surprised by the intensity of interest in what he still considered a minor incident. Dawson stepped to his side, raising his hands to quiet the crowd. Mr. Chen has graciously accepted our apology, and First National Bank is proud to support his foundation's work with underserved youth. We consider this matter amicably resolved. Thomas leaned toward the nearest microphone. I'm grateful for the bank's generous donation. The arts education programs will benefit tremendously. As Mr. Dawson said, the matter is resolved. A reporter from a local news station pushed forward. Mr. Chen, some people are saying this entire incident was staged to generate publicity for your upcoming film. Any comment? Thomas blinked in surprise. That's absolutely not true. It was a genuine misunderstanding. Another voice called out, "Is it fair that your celebrity status resulted in special treatment and a large donation when regular customers face similar issues daily?" Before Thomas could respond, Dawson stepped in. First National Bank is committed to excellent customer service for all clients. In this case, we recognize that our protocols, while designed for security, caused an inconvenience to Mr. Chen. Our response reflects our commitment to making things right. Nancy appeared at Thomas's side, smoothly inserting herself between him and the reporters. "Thank you all for coming. Mr. Chen needs to return to his filming schedule now." She guided Thomas toward the parking lot where her car waited, deflecting further questions with practiced ease. Once they were safely inside the vehicle, Thomas exhaled deeply. "That was intense," he said. "When did my bank visit become such a big story?" Nancy checked her mirrors and pulled out of the parking space. "Welcome to the age of viral news cycles. But look on the bright side. The foundation got a hefty donation and most of the coverage is positive. Did you hear those questions? Was it staged? My special celebrity treatment?" Thomas shook his head. "People are creating narratives that have nothing to do with what actually happened." "That's nothing new," Nancy replied, navigating through downtown traffic. "Every story gets filtered through people's biases and preconceptions. The important thing is that we controlled the ending. Generous donation, gracious acceptance, case closed." Thomas wasn't entirely convinced, but he let it drop. "Where are you taking me?" "The crew's getting drinks to celebrate wrapping the explosion scene. I figured you might want to avoid public places for a bit." "That story's going to be on the evening news." Nancy glanced at him. "But if you want to join your crew, I can drop you off." Thomas considered for a moment. The thought of more questions and comments about the bank incident was exhausting. But hiding away felt like an overreaction. "Let's stop by my place first so I can change," he decided. "Then you can drop me at the bar." When they arrived at his apartment building, Thomas was startled to see several photographers waiting outside. They surged forward as Nancy's car pulled up. "You've got to be kidding me," Thomas muttered. "They're staking out my home now?" Nancy frowned. "This is getting out of hand. Use the service entrance. I'll run interference." Thomas slipped out of the passenger side and hurried around to the back of the building, while Nancy engaged with the photographers. The service entrance was blessedly photographer-free, and Thomas used his keycard to enter. In his apartment, Thomas changed quickly into jeans and a casual shirt. He was about to text Lisa about meeting the crew when his phone rang, an unknown number. "Hello?" he answered cautiously. "Is this Thomas Chen?" asked a woman's voice. "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Catherine Powell. I'm a producer for the morning show. We'd love to have you on tomorrow to discuss your experience at First National Bank and how it highlights the challenges of fame in everyday situations." Thomas was speechless for a moment. A national morning show wanted him to discuss a bank visit. "I appreciate the invitation," he said finally, "but I'm currently in the middle of filming a project. My schedule is quite tight." "We could do a remote segment," she pressed. "Just 5 minutes. Our viewers would love to hear your perspective, especially after some banks have started to implement special celebrity protocols following your experience." "Wait, what? Special protocols?" "Yes. Several major banks have announced they're reviewing their verification procedures for high-profile clients. Your incident has sparked quite a conversation about celebrity treatment versus security." Thomas rubbed his forehead, feeling a headache coming on. "I'm sorry, but I'll have to decline. The incident was resolved with the bank, and I'd prefer to focus on my current project." After ending the call, Thomas sat on his couch, staring at his phone in disbelief. How had this escalated so quickly? What had started as a simple misunderstanding at his local bank had somehow become a national conversation about celebrity privilege. His phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. "Where are you?" "Drinks at Pete's bar, everyone's here," Thomas replied. On my way. Save me a seat away from windows." He considered calling an Uber but decided to drive himself. He needed the control and frankly he wasn't planning to stay long. When Thomas arrived at Pete's bar, a favorite spot among film crews, he slipped in through the side door. The place was crowded but cozy, with dim lighting and worn wooden booths. He spotted his castmates and crew in the back corner and made his way over. "There he is," Vincent called out. "The man who broke the banking system." The group erupted in good-natured laughter. Thomas smiled despite himself and slid into the booth beside Lisa. "Very funny," he said, accepting the beer someone pushed his way. "Please tell me we can talk about something else." "But it's such a good story," Lisa teased. "I saw the news coverage. You looked very dignified accepting that giant check." "The money's going to good use," Thomas said. "That's the only reason I agreed to the whole circus." The conversation mercifully shifted to the day's filming, the challenges of timing the explosion effects, the intensity of Thomas's performance in the escape sequence, plans for the next day's scenes. For a while, Thomas was able to relax and enjoy the camaraderie. Then he noticed a few people at nearby tables glancing his way, phones discreetly raised for photos. Lisa noticed his distraction. "Everything okay?" "I think I'm being recognized more than usual," Thomas said quietly. "You're trending," Vincent informed him, scrolling through his phone. "The bank apology video has over 1 million views already. People are actually making memes of your graciously accepting the check face," Thomas groaned. "Fantastic. Don't worry," Vincent assured him. "This will blow over in a day or two. Some celebrity will get caught stealing a street sign or dating a co-star, and no one will remember the bank thing." "I hope you're right," Thomas said, taking a long sip of his beer. As the evening wore on, Thomas found himself increasingly aware of the attention he was attracting. People who might normally have respectfully kept their distance were now approaching his table, making comments about the bank incident, asking for selfies. He obliged politely, but his energy was draining fast. Around 10 o'clock, he decided to call it a night. "Early call time tomorrow," he explained to the group. "Better get some rest." Lisa walked him to the door. "Want me to call you a car?" "I drove," Thomas said. "But thanks. Be careful out there," Lisa warned. "If those photographers found your apartment, they might be watching your car too." Thomas hadn't considered that. "Good point. Maybe I should call a car and pick up my vehicle tomorrow. Smart move. I'll wait with you." While they stood outside waiting for the car, Lisa studied Thomas's face in the dim streetlight. "You know, for someone who just got a $100,000 donation for his foundation, you look pretty miserable." Thomas attempted a smile. "I'm grateful for the donation. It's just, I didn't want any of this attention. I just wanted to withdraw some cash from my own account." "Fame is weird that way," Lisa observed. "Everything gets magnified, good and bad." "The thing is," Thomas said thoughtfully, "I keep thinking about Patricia Winters, the branch manager. She was just doing her job, following security protocols, and now she's been publicly humiliated, made to apologize on camera for being thorough at her job." Lisa considered this. "That's actually a really good point. Have you talked to her? I mean, really talked, not just the scripted apology thing?" "No," Thomas admitted. "Everything happened so fast." "Maybe you should," Lisa suggested as the car pulled up. "Might give you some closure," Thomas nodded slowly. "Maybe I will." As he settled into the back seat of the car, Thomas felt a new resolve forming. This story had spun far beyond his control, but perhaps there was still a way to steer it in a more positive direction, one that honored the truth rather than feeding the spectacle. Thomas woke early the next morning after a restless night. His conversation with Lisa kept replaying in his mind. She was right. He needed to speak with Patricia Winters not in a stage-managed public apology, but in a real conversation. He checked his phone and found dozens of notifications. More interview requests, messages from friends who'd seen the news, and a concerned text from his mother asking if he was okay. Thomas responded to his mother, ignored the interview requests, and scrolled to find Nancy's number. "It's 6 a.m., she answered groggily. "This better be important." "I need Patricia Winters' contact information," Thomas said without preamble. "The bank manager?" "Why?" Nancy sounded more awake now. "I want to talk to her. Privately, not in front of cameras or bank executives." Nancy was quiet for a moment. "I don't think that's a good idea, Thomas. The story's starting to fade. Reopening communication might stir things up again." "I'm not trying to stir anything up," Thomas explained. "I just want to have a real conversation with her. The whole public apology thing yesterday felt wrong." Nancy sighed. "I don't have her personal contact information, but I can call the bank's PR team and ask for it." "Please do." "And Nancy, make it clear this is a private matter, not for publicity." "I'll try my best. But you know how these corporate types are. Everything is publicity to them." After hanging up, Thomas showered and made breakfast, trying to formulate what he wanted to say to Patricia. By the time he left for the set, Nancy had texted him a phone number with the message. PR team reluctantly provided this. They asked what it's about. I said personal closure. Good luck. Thomas didn't have time to call before work, and once he arrived on set, the day's shooting schedule consumed his attention. They were filming a crucial scene where his character discovers the truth about his manipulated memories, a pivotal emotional moment in the film. Between takes, Vincent approached him. You seem extra focused today. Just trying to get the scene right, Thomas replied. Vincent studied him for a moment. The bank thing still bothering you? Thomas nodded. I'm going to call the branch manager later. Have a real conversation? Good move, Vincent said. Authenticity is always the best response to artifice. By mid-afternoon, they had completed the emotional scene to Vincent's satisfaction. Beautiful work, Thomas, the director said. We've got what we need. You're wrapped for the day. Thomas changed out of his costume and removed his makeup, then found a quiet corner of his trailer to make the call. He took a deep breath and dialed Patricia's number. The phone rang 3 times before she answered, her voice cautious. Hello? Patricia, this is Thomas Chen. A pause. Mr. Chen, I wasn't expecting to hear from you. I know this is unexpected, Thomas said. I was hoping we could talk. Not as part of any official bank business or publicity, just person to person. Another pause, longer this time. May I ask why? Because yesterday's apology ceremony didn't feel right to me. It wasn't real, and I think we both got caught up in something that spiraled out of our control. Patricia's voice softened slightly. That's perceptive of you. Where would you want to talk? There's a small coffee shop called Harbor View about 3 blocks from the bank. It's usually quiet in the late afternoon. I could meet you there in an hour if you're free. I get off work at 5, Patricia said. I could meet you at 5:30. Perfect. Thank you. Harbor View Coffee was tucked away on a side street, far from the usual tourist spots and business lunch crowds. Thomas arrived early and found a table in the back corner. He'd worn a baseball cap and sunglasses. Not much of a disguise, but enough to avoid immediate recognition. At exactly 5:30, Patricia Winters walked in. She was dressed in her work clothes, a conservative suit and low heels, but somehow looked more human, less rigid than she had at the bank. She scanned the room until she spotted Thomas, then walked over with measured steps. Thomas stood and extended his hand. Thanks for coming. Patricia shook his hand briefly. I admit I'm curious about this meeting. They both sat, and a server approached to take their orders. A black coffee for Thomas, a chai tea for Patricia. Once the server left, an awkward silence fell between them. Thomas decided to dive straight in. First, I want to apologize. Patricia looked genuinely surprised. You want to apologize? For what? For the way everything played out. For the public spectacle. For the fact that you were essentially forced to apologize on camera for doing your job. Patricia's professional facade cracked slightly. It wasn't my finest moment as a manager. I should have handled the situation better from the beginning. You were following security protocols, Thomas said. That's what you're supposed to do. Perhaps. But there were other ways I could have verified your identity without making you feel. She trailed off. Without making me feel like a potential fraud? Thomas supplied with a small smile. Patricia nodded. Exactly. The truth is, I'd only been managing celebrity accounts for a month. Your account was flagged in our system as high security, and when I saw that article about you filming overseas, you did what seemed logical, Thomas finished for her. I understand completely. Their drinks arrived, creating a natural pause in the conversation. Patricia wrapped her hands around her mug, seeming to draw comfort from its warmth. Can I ask you something? Thomas said after taking a sip of his coffee. How have things been at the bank since all this happened? Patricia looked down at her tea. Challenging. Some colleagues have been supportive. Others are keeping their distance, as if my mistake might be contagious. And Director Dawson? He's been professional. The public apology was his idea, or rather the corporate PR team's idea that he enthusiastically endorsed. Thomas nodded. I suspected as much. The hardest part, Patricia continued, has been the comments from customers. Everyone seems to have an opinion. Some are sympathetic, others are judgmental, and a few have specifically requested not to work with me. I'm sorry to hear that, Thomas said sincerely. None of this is what either of us wanted. Patricia took a sip of her tea, then looked directly at Thomas. May I ask you something now? Of course. Why did you agree to the public apology if it didn't feel right to you? Thomas considered the question. Partly because my publicist advised it, partly because of the donation to my foundation, and partly because I just wanted it all to be over. He paused, but I think I made a mistake. I participated in turning a human moment into a PR stunt. Patricia nodded slowly. That's exactly what it was. The bank was terrified of the negative publicity. They would have done anything to make it go away, including pressuring you to participate in that charade, Thomas observed. I wouldn't say pressured exactly. Patricia gave a wry smile. More like strongly encouraged in a way that made it clear my career advancement depended on it. They both laughed, and the tension between them eased considerably. So what now? Patricia asked. Why did you want to meet like this? Thomas leaned forward slightly. Because I wanted one real interaction to come out of this whole situation. No cameras, no scripts, no PR teams. Just two people talking about something that happened. Patricia smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her face. I appreciate that more than you know. They talked for another hour, moving beyond the bank incident to their lives and careers. Thomas learned that Patricia had worked her way up from teller to manager over 12 years, that she had a degree in financial management, and that she had a passion for landscape photography. In turn, he shared stories about his early struggles as an actor, his foundation work, and his hope that his current film project would draw attention to issues of memory and identity. As their conversation wound down, Thomas had an idea. Patricia, would you consider doing an interview with me? A real one, not a staged PR event. She looked surprised. What kind of interview? I've been getting calls from every news outlet imaginable. They all want me to talk about what happened. What if we did one together? Told the real story, how a security protocol met a mistaken news article, and how it all spiraled out of control. Patricia looked uncertain. I'm not sure the bank would approve. We wouldn't need their approval, Thomas said. This wouldn't be about blaming the bank or criticizing their procedures. It would be about how quickly stories get distorted in today's media environment, and how two people got caught in the middle of it. That's actually not a bad idea, Patricia said thoughtfully. But wouldn't it just create more attention? I thought you wanted this to fade away. I wanted the artificial version to fade away, Thomas clarified. But maybe there's a genuine story worth telling here, about misunderstandings, assumptions, and finding common ground. Patricia considered this for a moment. I'd need to think about it, and I'd want to be careful about what I say. I do still need my job. Of course, Thomas agreed. Take all the time you need. As they stood to leave, Patricia offered her hand again. Thank you for this, Mr. Chen, Thomas. It means a lot that you reached out. Thomas shook her hand warmly. Thank you for meeting me. Whatever you decide about the interview, I'm glad we had this conversation. Outside the coffee shop, they paused on the sidewalk. The evening was cool and clear, the street relatively quiet. You know, Patricia said, the strangest part of this whole experience has been realizing how quickly we form judgments about people, especially public figures. I thought I knew who Thomas Chen was based on interviews and film roles. And now? Thomas asked. Patricia smiled. Now I've met him. He's more thoughtful than I expected. And Patricia Winters is less intimidating than she first appeared, Thomas replied with a grin. They said their goodbyes, heading in opposite directions down the street. As Thomas walked, he felt a sense of closure that the elaborate bank apology had failed to provide. Whatever happened next, whether Patricia agreed to the interview or not, whether the story faded or found new life, he had reclaimed a measure of control over his own narrative. Some stories couldn't be managed with PR strategies or damage control. Sometimes the only way forward was through genuine human connection, finding the truth beneath the spectacle and the person behind the perception.